My name is Jerry Reed, and I'm here today with Heidi Moore and soon to be David Begin. And we are here to welcome you to what we want to consider the kickoff of ADK 2015 and our vision for healthy kids here in Clinton County. So I just want to get a sense of the audience today. How many of you here are parents, with a show of hands? Oh, many of you, that's okay, really good. How many of you who aren't parents expect that you may be working with children at some point in your lives? Okay, and how many of you are students who are forced to be here by your instructor? Oh, I know there's some in here like that. Okay, so I think we have a variety of people here, but one of the things I'm sensing is that all of you, no matter why you're here, will have some impact made by what we have to say tonight, because what we're talking about is a vision for healthy kids. And we're talking about a vision for healthy kids here in our community, and that impacts all of us. Everybody who lives here, if we have healthy families and healthy kids, we will have a healthy community. Let's see if I can figure this one out. So what is the vision and why are we here? Well, one of the reasons we're here is exactly for this reason. What our vision is healthy people, healthy families and children where we live, work, and play. So that encompasses our schools, that encompasses our work sites, that is everywhere where people are, we want it to be healthy. And not just healthy people individually, but we would like the community itself to be healthy. So what we would have is a community that supports health behaviors, in addition to having people who are in that community be healthy people. And the result of that is a huge payoff for all of us, both economically, both socially, for general health reasons. So we really are looking towards having a community health and not just individuals. So let's take a look at why we're here in Clinton County. All of us who live here have decided to live here for a variety of reasons. Number one, we probably like it. We've decided, some of us have moved away and come back, and we said, you know, things aren't so bad here. We've got a great quality of life. We don't have a lot of crime. Anybody who's lived in a larger city or more metropolitan area has probably experienced this. We have beautiful scenery, and I know when I used to live in traffic for many years, and I commuted and did the morning rush, and then I moved to Clinton County, and I saw the mountains, and I would drive here, and I would kind of get lost on my way to work because I would be looking at the scenery and going, boy, this is great. You know, I'm not dealing with an hour commute every day. This is a wonderful place to live. And I think we forget about that. We forget about the nice part of living here, except the long winters. But we do enjoy that. So we're looking at a scenery that, to a lot of people, they come here to vacation, and we take it for granted. So we have a great quality of life in that aspect. We also have recreation, if you choose to take advantage of them. There are recreation opportunities available, and we're getting more of those because the community is really coming together to create those opportunities for people as part of a healthy community. And the other thing we're doing is looking at the other parts of life, which are quality schools. So not only do we have good secondary schools for our young children, but we have community college, which is just such a nice setting. And we have the Plattsburgh State University College. So we have all of those opportunities available to us. So that's part of what makes our life healthy. The other big issue, and many times we take that for granted here in the United States, but not always does everybody have access to health care. And we are fortunate here to have a wonderful group of pediatricians who will care for our children and do a really good job at it. But we have access to health care for the majority of people, and that's a key part of developing healthy families and healthy communities. And as a result, we get a sense of community, that we all really feel like we belong here and we like to be here and we're going to stay here. And we're going to work together to make it the best place we can. And this is what this is all about, kind of working together to get the better quality of life that we all want. So we're special here in the North Country. So why are we here? Why did we decide to even talk to you about this? Well, I think probably because we have some challenges that all the other communities across the nation have. Things aren't perfect. So we do have challenges that face us, and that's what we want to talk about tonight. What are the challenges we face? And that's all they are, is challenges. And what are we going to do to make them better, to make our community the best place it can possibly be to live in? And specifically, what challenges are for children. So let's take a walk back. Some of you, and I'm looking around, and I'm not seeing a lot of people who are going to remember this stuff. So those of you who may remember this, those of you who may not, think of what your parents have told you about the old days. So we're going to talk about the old days, okay? And what happened in the old days? Well, in the old days, people often ran outside to play with their brothers and sisters. Now, I know summer vacations for me wasn't a list of things that you could do, a list of community events and a list of summer camps, because I've experienced that with my own children. And what you do is look for that for childcare opportunities. That's one of the really big things you have to do. But back in the day, we would have the summer off and our parents would say, nicely, but boot, go outside and play. Go play with your neighbors. And so we would go outside and we would play all day. And nobody was afraid that we were going to be snatched. And nobody was afraid that we would get hurt. We went and played. And then after we played all day, we sat down and ate dinner. Now, it wouldn't necessarily be and meet ideal nutritional standards as we know today, but we all sat down and had a family meal. And then we may sit down to one of our 3 channels of television, believe it or not. That's all we had. And not only did we only have 3 channels of television, we had 1 television. And we had to fight over the television to see who got to watch their favorite program on one of those 3 channels. And usually it was the oldest person who won out on that. So there was a lot of different things that happened at that point in time that don't happen now. The other thing being, we did a lot more walking. I don't know if any of you remember, and maybe not to school, but you may have taken a walk down to the corner store. You may have walked to the movies. You may have walked to the beach. But you did more walking or you rode your bike. And we're not doing as much of that as we used to. So things change, sometimes for the good, sometimes not for the good. And as a result, we have a variety of changes that have encompassed our community here in Clinton County and the nation. And think of these things that have happened. When you look at the food accessibility, some of it's good. We have a lot more access to produce throughout the year than we ever did, but we have a lot of access to foods that are available everywhere you go. We can go to a gas station, we can go to a school, we can go anywhere and find a vending machine that will dispense anything we may want in terms of certain types of foods. So the access to food has changed and we expect it. And part of that is the demand because of the lifestyle we're leading, that we needed access to certain kinds of foods. The television, it's not just TV. What else are people doing? What other kinds of things do people do with the television? Pardon me?
Video games.
Video games, computer games, technology. Again, a wonderful thing. But what has happened is children now are watching television, they're playing computer games, even if it's the Wii or Connect or some of those other kinds of things. So we have people that are more engaged by media and by TV. So we're doing a lot more sitting and a lot more eating than we used to do, is kind of the bottom line. The result of this is that we now suffer from chronic preventable diseases. And this wasn't always the case. But the second statement on the screen is for the first time in history that we know of, children may not outlive their parents. Now, when you think about that, that's a pretty strong statement. Because all of us who are parents, all of us who may become parents, what you want is your children to have a better quality of life. You want your children to have more opportunities. You sure want them to be healthier and to have a longer life than you do. That's what parents do. And so somehow we have created a culture where this may not happen anymore. That's a really powerful thing to think about. How did we get like this? And what are we going to do about it is really the question. So I want to take a look at our county and our little spot up here and give you an idea of what's happening here in Clinton County. When you look at the statistics, this is a 50-year picture of Clinton County and what's causing us to have problems with life and what's causing us to die. In 55, and you look from 55 to 2008, the major reasons we were dying were heart disease and cancer. Hasn't changed. Still heart disease, still cancer. You see diabetes is on the screen also. You'll notice chronic lower respiratory disease 50 years later. What do you think? Why? Why is that? Cigarettes? Probably. We didn't have that data back in 1955. So what you're looking at is a lot of things that have happened that have stayed the same, and some of the other things in 1955, pneumonia, prematurity, we've made strides in those. And that's really significant. But we're still seeing these chronic diseases taking a huge piece of our lives. So let's take a look at what's causing this. You'll see in red the reasons in 2008, the causes of death. And then you'll see in the last column the causes of those things, the potential causes of some of those diseases. So what you're looking at are what's really killing us. And this is what's killing us. Okay, does anybody surprised about this? We all know tobacco is a huge culprit. We've made great strides in this. But look at these other things: poor diet and nutrition, the lack of physical activity, and alcohol. And if you look back to what we just talked about in terms of what we were doing in our culture and how we've changed our culture, how does that get us here? Do you see the instances that we've developed for poor diet? Yeah, we have all the vending, we have access to food. Do you see how we have developed so that we don't have as much physical activity? And the result is these diseases that are largely preventable. But you know what? That's actually good because we can do something about it. That's the good thing. We don't have to say, oh, well, it's all genetics. Oh, this is really sad, but this is the way it is. It's not. We recognize this and we know we can do something about it. So all of these things, we don't have to smoke cigarettes. We don't have to have a poor diet. We don't have to be physically inactive. We don't have to choose to drink alcohol. All of these things can impact the way we live. So what do we know? Or what I usually like to say is, what do we think we know? Because every time I think I know something, it changes. So what do we think we know? Well, what we think we know is that prevention is very possible, but it's actually the way to go. Prevention is preferable. It is a lot easier to make sure somebody doesn't get a disease than it is to fix it afterwards. We all know how habits are hard to change. We know how diseases are hard to reverse. So if we take it from a prevention standpoint, this is the absolute way to go. And if we reduce those instances of chronic disease, the major risk factors, we could get rid of 80% of the heart disease, 80% of stroke, 80% of type 2 diabetes, and 40% of cancer. So why do we care about this for our children? Why on earth are we talking about this kind of stuff? Because this is adult stuff. Why are we talking about this when this is a pediatric talk? What do you think? I think David Begin is the person with the answers for this.
So, it is a good question. Why focus on all that adult public health kind of data? Probably a lot of it is not completely surprising. Well, because we now know that those diseases really do start to show up in kids. They may not be dying of heart disease, diabetes, lung cancer, but they start the habits at least in that direction, and may actually already start to show the physical changes in their bodies that eventually lead to their death. When I was in medical school, we all learned about high blood pressure and its importance, but there really was often a comment that, well, but if you're doing pediatrics, you don't really need to worry about that because it's really something that affects adults. That was a nice thought. In my quarter century of doing this, I've seen more and more kids with blood pressure problems. Where? Well, from the diet that they're eating, the lack of exercise. We've all known that obesity was becoming more and more of an issue in the last 20 years. Slowly, and like a lot of things that change slowly, it doesn't hit you in the face on a Monday morning, oh my gosh, everybody's obese. But you have this nagging sense that maybe something's not right here. Once you start to recognize, well, kids are having high blood pressure, they're having type 2 diabetes, they are obese, then clearly from our point of view as pediatricians, we start thinking, okay, so what are we supposed to be doing about that? What medicine should I be pulling out that fixes that? Well, if there's an easy medicine, that's very appealing, but it turns out that for most of those illnesses, there isn't a medicine that prevents them. There has to be a different approach to how we take care of our bodies. I don't think I've met many people in my time as a pediatrician or in my life who didn't have some sense that, yeah, I want to take care of this body. I certainly want my children's bodies to be healthy. So a lot of those kinds of changes that affect health, they're pretty easy. If something makes you sick this afternoon and you can tie it to what happened early in the day, that you notice. But when it happens slowly, it's very difficult for our brains to notice it. So as we have worked through that as pediatricians, we've started to try to say, well, what key things could we do that would encourage people to change the behaviors that they do that would not take children straight down the path to some of those chronic illnesses? Okay. As we've looked at the obesity, we've seen startling numbers from across the country with increasing proportions of the population fitting into a category of overweightness. I'd say in medical school, I heard not a single lecture about what overweightness really meant. Well, I guess it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, if you look overweight, you must be overweight. Well, to some extent, but from a doctor point of view, that doesn't do me very much good. And so in the last 20 years, there's been a lot of work trying to say, could you actually come up with something in the way of numbers that would be helpful to people? Well, my friend weighs 20 pounds more than me, so I must be okay, or he must be overweight. Yeah, but he's also a foot taller than me, so maybe it can't just be the weight. Well, he's really muscular. Oh, yeah, that's important too. So this idea of a body mass index was borrowed from other sciences, but the body mass index takes into account that taller people should weigh more. They have more bone, more skin, more blood, and so forth. And so we have started regularly in the last few years calculating that for all of our pediatric patients. Some of you as adults may have had your adult physician also calculate that and show you a graph that says, well, you're kind of on the borderline, maybe you should work on it. Oh, you're really over that, but I don't feel overweight. Well, yes, but your numbers show that there could be a problem there. So it's not so much what you look like or even what you think. It's if that body mass index goes up, it increases the risk of the heart disease, the diabetes, and the other chronic illnesses that Jerry was talking about. These numbers that are depicted in the graph here came from recent work that we've done as part of the community medical home. All the pediatric practices started contributing data to a central pool where we could start to actually look at the numbers for our own community. And I don't think any of the pediatricians were surprised that there was a problem. It certainly was an eye-opener to actually see the numbers because, and it's a little dark there. I'm not sure how easy that is to see. Can you see the numbers on that? All right, so for the first group, this is the preschool group, 2 to 5, and just over half the kids meet the criteria for being overweight or obese. And that's a lot of kids. That's not every once in a while you see a child with a weight problem. It's a significant number. And they're preschoolers. They shouldn't have had a chance to go out and eat Doritos after school and lots of ice cream. So it's happening very early for them in their lives. In the elementary group, this is 61%, so 6 out of 10 kids meet the criteria for being overweight. In the middle school, it's 63%, so sort of similar. Maybe a little surprising in the high school group, the number's lower. We're not sure what that means or if that'll really continue to be there when we have more and more data put into it. It could be that by high school, people have become better educated and made some changes, but we don't really know about that. But even if that's true, it's still half of the kids that are overweight. So not half the kids who have heart disease in high school, not if half of them have diabetes, they don't even close to half of them have high blood pressure, but in their bodies, that process is already rolling. And if you went looking, you'd be able to find that that was true. So that's the scary part, because that means there's a clock already ticking, and it's ticking towards an endpoint, which none of us are happy about. How fast that goes? Well, even if we're looking at our kids in high school, we're not giving up on them saying, no, pretty much, okay, that's already happened, the clock's ticking. There's plenty of opportunity to look at that and say, what could you do to lessen the risk that's there? This is another way of looking at it, just puts all the age groups together. That might be a little easier to see. The green part over here is 43%. Those are the 43% of kids who are not overweight. So, 4 out of 10 kids in our community are not overweight or obese. The kids in the purple section of that, 21%, really meet the obese, the very overweight category, for which all the risks are the greatest. Are there any questions about what those numbers mean or how to think about them? So in the past, the kind of medicine that most of us learned in medical school or in nursing school, the kinds of things that the focus is on, has been on the idea, if there's a problem, let's see what we can do to fix it. I don't think there's anybody in the room who would want that to go away. If I have appendicitis, please take it out before I die, and then I'll get better and go on living my life. So we like a lot of what the medical system has done for us in being able to address health problems that come up for us on a particular day. Whether they're health things that we've done to ourselves or happened by accident or because of our genetics, it's very important that we have tools to try to address it. It's only been lately, and by that I'd say in the last couple of decades, that across all of healthcare people have realized, oh, that only takes care of a small portion of the human suffering that happens with disease, and a lot of the things that are left over, you can come see me and I might not be able to fix it for you. I can remind you that smoking is not such a good thing to be doing. Can we help you stop? I may be able to help you with that, but it's not something I can send you off with an easy treatment that in a couple of weeks you feel great and you've forgotten about your appendicitis. So in the process of trying to switch for that, it's required at every level people change the way they look at health, not as something that just is fine usually and sometimes needs to be fixed when it's broken, but something that every one of us has to sort of build every day, take care of every day, pay attention to every day, and actually make decisions every day that either take us down the road towards better health or down another road to something else which is not what we want. So I think I still want my doctor to help me with the things that get broken, if they get broken, and try to do something to fix them. But I also expect my doctor to be giving me input to help me look at what I could be doing different that would improve my health. I think every one of my patients' parents are expecting that of me too. He's got an ear infection, please help us with that, doc. If you're telling me that what we're doing is going to lead him towards lousy health, explain that to me again, because that sounds harder, but I'm willing to listen. Right? So in trying to approach that, one of the ways to do that is to say, well, okay, but who's responsible? Aren't you the doctor? Aren't you just supposed to do that stuff? I mean, I am busy with a lot of other interesting, important things. You mean, you're not just going to do it? Okay, I'm a parent. I know I want my kids to be healthy. I knew that was part of the job going in. Yeah, I'm responsible for my kids' health too. How about my kids? Well, when they're babies, I know they can't do too much for themselves. They really depend on me. But when they're 5 and we've gone over that one bowl of ice cream is enough, and he's pushing me back on I want another bowl, he needs to take some responsibility for this. I'm going to have to help him look at that and see that he too can make decisions that lead to his own better health. How about the community? Well, those are our neighbors, the people we see. How does that really affect my health? Well, it sure affects my health if the person who's driving down the street isn't looking out for my child when he's on the bike. That's a real pediatric worry this time of year, because kids are out on their bikes for the first time in months, and all the drivers may still be in that brain where, there are no kids. I can whip into this driveway. Oh, except there was somebody coming down the driveway. So my community can certainly affect my child's health if they're doing dangerous things. What about if everybody who adores my child wants to feed him ice cream, cake, candy, soda? But we love him, he's great. But is that really helping him with his health? Well, how are we supposed to show him we love him? Well, actually, you want a list? Because there's a long list of other things you could be doing other than feeding him things that he doesn't need. So, it's relatives, grandparents, friends, neighbors. We're going to have a birthday party. It's going to be pizza, ice cream, soda, cake. Any problem with that? Well, no. But if my child's getting invited to 6 birthday parties this month, that's actually starting to stack up a little bit. He wouldn't be eating that much stuff in my house, so I need a little help here, right? Somebody else needs to be thinking that my child needs to be directed in the right way so that his health continues to be good, so he learns about that. So we really all everyone in this room can play a role in the things that affect children's health. And every one of you who drives knows that. Yeah, I could make all kinds of mistakes driving. Hitting a child on a bike is just not on the list. It can't be. There's no way I can let that happen. The pieces come in simple, straightforward things that you all know, and then potentially things that we haven't really worked on together as a community yet, but as we do, may make big differences for our kids. So we want to help them make their own healthy choices. But if the old man is eating ice cream after supper by the bowlful, what is the chance that my child's going to accept that one bowl's all he needs? Well, it's only one bowl when Dad's around, because he eats it all evening long, and I like it too. And so it's our choices and what we teach our children to do. If I go to my doctor, I don't just want the stuff that needs to be fixed done. I really need to expect that he or she is going to help me identify the things that I'm not seeing. I should know, but maybe I don't know. I'm counting on that person, the nurse in the office, the diabetic educator, to give me information that helps me make different decisions for myself. And then maybe I can also have that help my kids, my neighbors, my family members. And then the community part, saying we can start with simple things like maybe thinking about a different menu for the birthday party. But also we need to ask our leaders in the community to be willing to support changes that lead to better health for our kids, for all of us. And you have all noticed, if you've been reading the local news, that there have been some things in there that relate to this. If you have a new walking path along the river, that didn't just happen. There were some people behind that who said walking is a really straightforward, wonderful way to work on physical health. And yeah, anybody can walk up Route 3, but if you've done it, it's not a whole lot of fun. There's no real sidewalk. There are people pulling in, the diesel trucks driving by. I'm not thinking that's what I want to go do. But if there's a nice stroll along the river, birds, trees, the water going by, if it's not flooded. So as a community, we should be looking for those things, supporting it when we see it happening. If we don't think it's being done well enough, jumping in, contributing, having ideas of our own to help with that. So in preparing this, we were in many ways thinking about parents and what do we see the parents in our office asking for in terms of help with this. But really, the things that a parent would want to know what to do can apply to all of us, even if we're not actively parents, because we can be supportive of the people we know who are, of the kids in our life who might not be our own children. So Dr. Heidi is going to take you from here into some thoughts about
You have that microphone.
what we
Thanks.
can all be doing as parents.
So I hope by now everybody's gotten an idea that this is truly a collaborative effort. So we are up here as a community saying we think this is critical, and not only do we up to this point want to give you an idea of why it's important, so nobody, we will throw our bodies in front of the door if you leave here thinking obesity and overweight and these issues are not a problem for our kids. You've got to know by now that they are a problem. When you look at numbers that say 4 out of 10 kids don't have an overweight or obesity problem in our community, holy cow. So you got to leave here saying at least, number one, this is an issue. Now this part is where we now go into, well, what do we do about it? And that's why everybody's here, right? Is what do we do about it? Well, there's a lot of information out there about what you do about it. So all through the media, all through stuff, you got tons of information about vitamins, sodium, fiber. What are you going to do? We need something a little easier, right? Because all of a sudden it becomes overwhelming. And it shouldn't be rocket science. Who's heard about the Adirondack Regional Medical Home Pilot Program? Raise your hand. Yes, I know the front row has. So raise them again. I just want to see again. Okay, so we have more work to do to get that message out about the Regional Medical Home Pilot Program. About 1.5 years ago, so in 2010, the primary care physicians in this community, Franklin, Essex, and Hamilton County, joined a pilot program that is one of the largest in the nation. I don't think people realize what a gold mine of resources we're sitting on right now in our community. What we did is we said, as primary care physicians, either we're doing it already and we need to be certified, or we need to transform ourselves into something called a patient-centered medical home. And so hundreds, literally hundreds of providers, over 100, 106, 116, whatever, of providers here in your community have just, hot off the press, last week, been certified as a patient-centered medical home. And this started 1.5 years ago. In the process of doing that, we had to sit down and say, what's important in our community? What healthcare issues are we facing, and what do we need to do about it? And for kids, hands down, you've seen the numbers. We looked at the numbers. For kids, the issue was obesity and lifestyle, and what are we doing for our kids to give them a healthy lifestyle? And so as a community, we came up with ADK 2015. Now 2015 happens to be when the pilot program ends. But in no way is that the end for what we want. We don't think we're going to be at the end point in 2015. What we think is we're now starting a whole new trend for the Adirondacks, for our region. So we've come up with ADK 2015, and that's our vision. What that means is we want children to have an active lifestyle. We want them to make good dietary choices, but more important than anything, we want them to keep a balance in their lives. Here's it in a nutshell, okay? There are actually some cards over here as well. I don't know if you guys saw the laminated cards on this table. It's got everything written down. And David and I are in different pediatric practices, but we sit down with our patients every day and we say, here's ADK 2015. Pick one of these numbers and do something, because if you pick one of these numbers, you're going to make an impact in your life. 2 winters of breastfeeding, 0 sugary drinks a day, 1 hour of activity a day, and 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. That's it. That's all we're asking. So it's simple, right? We had this argument, or not argument, but a discussion about whether this is simple or not. It's 4 things. It's simple. Well, it's not really. And so the whole reason we've got a 3-part series is because it's not easy. It's not just saying 2 winters of breastfeeding, good luck. It's not just 0 sugary drinks a day. It's not easy, but this is the nuts and bolts of it. There are programs very similar to this. The First Lady, for example, has started a program and really taken childhood obesity, tried to bring it to the national spotlight and say this is a problem. There are programs all around the country. Maine has a program called Maine 50210. They all have very similar numbers in them because we know statistically and scientifically that if you follow these numbers, 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, or 0 or 1 or whatever, that you're going to make a difference in children's lives. This is where I'm so proud of our community for making a change. This is where we're different from other programs across the country. We said, you know what, when you look at childhood obesity, when you look at a healthy lifestyle, when you look at how you're going to impact children for the rest of their lives, guess what? You need to start at the beginning. And the beginning is at breastfeeding. So we want kids to have the choice, and excuse me, not the choice. We want them to have a chance from infancy to have 2 winters of breastfeeding. We want to start at the beginning. And if you're sitting here saying, I'm as far from breastfeeding as it is possible to be, I am a whatever, 20-year-old college male student, I'm not breastfeeding in my lifetime, I have no plan. You know, if you're as far away from possible of breastfeeding an infant, your support in the community is still critical. Because when you look at the studies, the reason women don't breastfeed is not because they don't want to, it's because they don't have the support to do it. So as a community, if we're going to have healthy kids, we're going to have kids that start out being breastfed. The second part of this program next week is really going into the why. So I'm giving you the nuts and bolts. I'm giving you sort of an overview. I'll tell you one of the things that you're going to find out next week. Don't tell anybody. But next week, what you'll find out is that 20% of excess weight gain can be tied back to sugary drinks. So what does the body need? And we're going to say this over and over again. The body needs water. And if you're pouring something else into your kids besides water, you may be giving them excess calories that they don't need. You may be giving them drinks. Okay, let's say it's a no calorie drink. Let's say it's a 0 whatever calorie drink. Maybe it's not calories, maybe it's harmful though. Maybe it's chemicals the body doesn't need. Maybe it's dyes, or, I mean, it's stuff that the body doesn't need. The body needs water. So 0 sugary drinks a day. if you guys think about what your day was like today, and you look at Jerry's slide earlier about what our society has become, what did it used to be, what is it now? If we're going to make changes in our children's lives, we've got to rethink our lifestyle. From the minute you get up in the morning to the minute you go to bed at night, what did we do today that was active? And a lot of times the answer is not much. We got up, maybe we ate breakfast, maybe we didn't. We got in our car, we went to work, which often is a sedentary job. We came home, maybe we ate dinner at home with our families or maybe not, watched TV, got on the computer for a little bit, went to bed. And that's not finger pointing saying, you know, the people who do that are bad. The people who do that are us. That's us. That's what our lifestyle has created. That's what our society has created as a lifestyle. But if we're going to change our children's health, we have to change their lifestyle. So all of a sudden we got to rethink everything. We got to say, what are we doing for activities? Is our family activity sitting down watching TV, or is our family activity going out and taking a walk? What are we doing about computer? What are we doing about video games? And then finally is 5 servings of fruits and vegetables. And I see a ton of familiar faces in the crowd. Everybody knows I've got a 2-year-old and 4-year-old at home. And let me tell you, I know sitting down with a green bean and making it do like the green bean dance 3 times before they eat it is time consuming, and it's hard, and it's, you know, the broccoli is now a giant forest that you're going to have to, you know, chop down or whatever it is. But the thing is, if we're going to make a change, it's going to be with their diet as well. And we want our kids to go to those fruits and veggies as their comfort food, as that source of nutrition that gives them happiness instead of the stuff that's not healthy for them or not as healthy for them. So when we look at 5 fruits and vegetables, we're looking at the biggest bang for your buck. And we're also looking at establishing a child's establishing a child's taste from the get-go. So if you've got a 6-month-old and you never feed them juice, they don't want it. If you never feed them fried spam, they don't ever want it. So it's establishing the taste from the beginning. Now, saying that, if we have a teenager that comes into our office and they've got some problems and they've got some weight issues, it's not as if the cow's out of the barn or whatever. That's what we said in Georgia. I don't know what you say up here, what the bear left the forest, or I don't know what you say up here. Anyhow, it's not as if it's too late, but it's easier to do the younger you start. Okay, so we've got this broken into 3 different sections. This is the introduction. You guys ought to leave here saying, number 1, this is a problem. Not just like a little bit of a problem, but a big problem. If you never had a child, if you never had any idea that you would want your child to have a healthier lifestyle than you ought to care about how many dollars you're paying into the healthcare system. I mean, if we could decrease our healthcare costs just by preventing some things and making healthier lifestyles, it'd make a huge difference. Next week is why does it matter? So we're going to take each of these things, we're going to go into much more detail about 2015. Why do all these things matter? And next week you're going to walk out of here and say, I have no doubts why these things will make an impact if I enact them in my life and my children's life. I have no reason to wonder why it's important. And then the 3rd week, you guys will walk out of here with really practical stuff. Okay, so I already gave you one, the green bean dance, okay? So everybody can walk out of here saying I can make a green bean dance across the table and my child will eat it. But we're going to give you some more really practical stuff to take home. The fun part about this is we're giving door prizes and we're giving some other stuff, so I'll let Chris, I'm sure, will come up and do that. Right now, I want to make sure everybody has a chance for questions. And this is to me, Jerry, and David. Yep.
What role do you think the school lunches or lunches that are provided play?
This would be Jerry Reed.
Okay.
Could you repeat that?
What role do you think the school lunch program plays in all of this? And do you think it's a support, a hindrance, a little bit of both? I don't work for a school, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of factors that could be, I could talk about this for days because I love this topic. But number one, I think it's important to be role modeling behaviors in school. My issue is not so much with the school lunches, even though some of them certainly have a lot of room for improvement. They are very dependent on a lot of commodity foods that come their way that may not be the best choices. That's number one. Number two is the problem that we see in schools is not so much the school meals, because when you look at what's happened with school meals, kids who eat school meals usually eat better than the kids who are bringing food from home. I've seen some of the lunches people bring from home. You wouldn't want to be feeding them, and they're not food safe either. But the other issue that's of more importance is the foods that are available, the competitive foods. And when I showed the picture of the soda machines, guess where that's located, okay? Where are all those other machines? You have school stores that are selling stuff that you may not want your child to eat, but guess what, folks? They're in middle school, they're going with a buck in their pocket, and that's what they're buying. So that's where I have issues, and we're certainly working on that. We have a grant in Clinton County, and we're doing things with it. And there's a lot of legislation that has happened, so that probably will change at some point.
Thank you.
How much fiber should a child 10 years old be having?
Fiber?
Fiber.
David. I'm just going to pass the microphone.
An adult, it's what, 35 grams?
How many people in here know what fiber is?
Right, so you look at the back of the package and it'll say fiber. The reality is that
Fiber is a huge part of nutrition that most people just kind of have lumped together as, oh, fiber in the food. So sawdust is fiber, not particularly nutritious. How much of that do you need? Well, you can eat a lot and it won't probably hurt you, but it's not helpful. It doesn't help you. That five fruits and vegetables, 5 is actually a baseline. You want to do at least that, and then potentially more. And why? Well, yes, there's vitamins, minerals, and dietary fiber, and that's the part that when I ask my patients about, they're the least likely to even have a flicker. There are many different chemicals that end up being called fiber, and each one of them can do very different things in the digestive system. I'm not going to give our lecture on that either, but so if you work on the 5 a day of fruits and vegetables, you probably get where you should be as a baseline for fiber. Another part that we're not emphasizing is whole grains. The current recommendations are at least 50% of the carbs you eat should be in the whole grain version. More is better, but that's sometimes hard for people. If you do whole grains and you do the 5 fruits and vegetables or more a day, you really don't have to spend a lot of time worrying about the gram amount. And the gram amount isn't really the important part. It is what's the quality of that fiber. Are you eating a diverse range of bacteria in your gut that help you out every day, and about which nobody in my household wants to hear about it at the dinner table. But you know, it's a fascinating world, and maybe in the future talks, if there were more interest, we could get into that. But
just a question about juice, as I was a little late. I know it's empty calories and you'd rather eat the apple than drink the apple juice. But if you have children and these juices that give you like a serving of vegetables and a serving of fruit in them, are they of any benefit, or is it just
no
the same?
fiber, right?
Yeah, it really is, you know, going to the source, you know. It's really, the only time I ever recommend juice for my patients is for constipation, because that fixes it.
So
But
milk, water, and that's it.
that's really all your body needs. And honestly, they don't need milk, they need calcium. So if you get calcium from another source, well, it's okay.
Milk is a cheap, relatively cheap, accessible source of calcium, but we all have patients who can't drink milk. They can do fine getting calcium from other sources. Takes a little bit more thought, but it can be done.
I see the disbelief.
Yeah, so
I'm
what
just
happens?
trying to put this into my
You drink a
children's
glass of
diet as
orange
I'm
juice.
sitting here thinking.
I know.
You drink a glass of orange juice and your mouth is happy for a few moments. And then it hits your gut, and that sugar in the liquid form just goes like a tsunami into your bloodstream. Anybody who's working with diabetes realizes, oh, got to be careful about that. Otherwise, after lunch, my blood sugar is through the roof. You eat the orange, you still get the same amount of sugar potentially, although one glass of squeezed orange juice, maybe 3 or 4 oranges worth of juice, and all that pulp goes in when you eat the orange, and it very much slows down the speed with which the sugar gets into your bloodstream. So your body may get the same amount of sugar.
Well, if you drank the small glass of orange juice, but it's spread out over 2 hours going into your body instead of this big slug of sugar that forces your insulin to respond. And so the question is very much a basic one, because we're going against the tide on that, right? That stuff tastes good. At the grocery store, let's see, I think I can find water here somewhere. Oh, and there's the milk cooler, and then there's the whole aisle of beautiful looking, great tasting sweetened beverages, and it just keeps going. How do you pick? Because there's so many of those there. So the culture is drink sweetened beverages because that's what we can sell you. What you really need is you turn on your tap.
I think that's one of the interesting things is how much do we do and how much of our lifestyle has changed because of marketing. I mean, there's just some fascinating stuff as far as what someone has told me is good. So vitamins, minerals, ooh, that sounds so good, but really not what we need. And excuse me, we need vitamins and minerals. We don't need the juice. We need to get it a different way. Other questions, guys? Yep.
You know the numbers of the percentage of children that are overweight, is that reflective of the adults that are overweight county, do you know? And is there going to be a program like this for adults, overweight adults?
That's part of the Adirondack Medical Home. Their 3 disease states that they're looking at are diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. Sorry, they're such adult diseases. And absolutely, we just had a meeting the other night about what are we doing? How are we going to get this out in the community? So I would anticipate yes. I mean, we're already rolling out some diabetes education around town because of the medical home. Yeah, it's going to be there. You asked the first part, Mary. Say the first part of your question again, because there was something else. Oh, yes, it's very reflective. And another study actually showed that up to, if we go by what's going to be projected, up to 80% of adults will be overweight or obese. In 10 years, I think it was. I've forgotten the exact study. The slide that David showed is pulling from our initial data from the medical home, and what we all looked at and said, oh, I'm not really sure that's right or not, is because typically what you see is a certain number of kids in preschool are overweight or obese, a bigger number in elementary school, a bigger number in middle school, and a much bigger number in high school. So what didn't quite look right about that, and what he sort of referenced, is that dropped off a little bit in the high school age, and that's typically, we think it's probably a data issue, and once we get
If it's
some
true,
more
it's
that,
great, but
yeah,
it's probably
we
not
really
true.
don't think it's true. So yes, it follows up and gets worse and worse. So the projection is up to 80% of adults sometime soon.
This has been happening for a while. So, when I was in medical school way back in the last century, the general thought was that at 18, most people were at close to what would be an ideal body weight. And then if they weren't careful, every year after that, they'd put on a pound of weight so that by the time they were going back to their 30th high school graduation anniversary, they had put on 30 pounds. They were at that point potentially overweight, potentially not necessarily, and probably not obese. Well, if you start when you're 5 and you're already obese, at 18, if nobody's helped you with that, you're past that even. And if you were only putting on an extra pound every year after that, well, it only gets worse, right? So from a PEDS point of view, to say, if we can do something about this with our kids, so that at 18 we come back to something like, yeah, you're probably pretty close to your ideal body weight, well, then there's still adult work to be done. Why should you have to put on a pound a year? It's certainly not automatic. It may take some work beyond just lifestyle, because there may be other health aspects to that. But so our model, I think, for a while kind of stuck on that. Oh, pretty much everybody's fine at 18, and oh yeah, over time they put on extra weight. Hello, there was this big problem starting to happen. When it comes to epidemics, we are usually good as a species of responding in some way to that. At least that's been true in the last 250 years. But we're often well into it before we go, wow, everybody in this town is getting cholera. Maybe we should see where that's coming from, right? So we, as physicians, definitely own up that this was happening. We were seeing it, but it was staring us in the face, and we were slow to be able to respond to it and say, this can't go on, we have to do something different. So here we are, we're working on it, and there are lots of parts to it. One of the reasons why we didn't do more about it, because even back in the 1990s, I would go to lectures about obesity, and it would be all about, well, check thyroid, and a bunch of very interesting medical tests you would do, and and this probably only applies to 1% of the patients you see who have obesity. Well, very important to know about that, but what about the other 99%? Well, just tell them to eat better. Okay, I'll do that. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I still have patients who are overweight and obese. So clearly me telling them to eat better was not enough. Right. So we clearly have now an idea of a model that goes beyond that. Don't just depend on me to tell you to eat better. Let's all work on this together to make sure that everything in our community points our kids back to what they need to be doing.
Other questions? I went to medical school in this century, so, and they actually weren't talking about it when I was in medical school either. So, but every day in the office we see not just overweight or obese kids. We see the problems now. We see diabetes. We see high blood pressure. So, as a community, we got to fix it. And we can do it.